For the last 100 years or so, the deal between workers and the economy has been pretty simple. You go to work, you trade your time for a paycheck, and that paycheck gets cycled back into the system through rent, groceries, car payments, the occasional weekend splurge, and if you're lucky, a little bit left over to save or invest. The whole machine runs on this exchange. Companies need workers to make stuff. Workers need paychecks to buy stuff. And the stuff that gets bought funds the next round of paychecks. It's not perfect, but it works well enough that most people don't really question it. But that arrangement is built on one quiet assumption, which is that human labor actually has to be part of the equation. And right now, we are watching that assumption get tested in real time. AI tools that didn't exist 3 years ago are now writing code, drafting legal documents, generating marketing copy, designing graphics, doing customer service, analyzing spreadsheets, and producing entire videos with voiceovers that sound disturbingly close to real human beings. The technology is far from perfect, and tech CEOs love to oversell what their products can actually do, but even in this clunky early form, AI is already replacing real jobs at real companies.
How big AI will be, how it could lead to superintelligence replacing humans.
AI may be coming for some job sectors, but as far as plumbers and electricians and those kinds of trade jobs go, those people are safe.
And the pace is only accelerating. So if your job gets automated tomorrow, the obvious problem is the missing paycheck. But the less obvious problem, the one that almost nobody is talking about, is what happens to your money in a world where the entire economy starts shifting around the assumption that you might not have any. The setup. Here's the thing nobody wants to admit out loud. Companies do not actually need you to have a job. They need someone to buy their products. For most of modern economic history, those have been the same group of people. But AI is in the early stages of breaking that link. And once it breaks, the whole map of who matters in the economy gets redrawn. Goldman Sachs estimated that around 300 million full-time jobs globally could be exposed to automation by generative AI. The IMF has put the number even higher, suggesting roughly 40% of jobs worldwide will be affected in some way. Now, affected is doing a lot of heavy lifting in those reports because it does not necessarily mean every one of those jobs disappears overnight. Some get supplemented, some get downgraded, some just quietly stop hiring replacements when people leave. But the result for the average worker is the same. Your bargaining power goes down, your wages stagnate, and your sense of job security starts to feel a lot more theoretical. I have some good news and some bad news for the average worker in this scenario. The good news. The good news is that history shows technology has displaced jobs many times before, and the economy has always eventually adjusted. Tractors put millions of farm workers out of work, and those workers eventually moved into factories. Then factories got automated, and those workers moved into offices and service jobs. ATMs were supposed to wipe out bank tellers, and bank teller employment actually grew for years afterward because banks could now afford to open more branches. Every wave of automation has come with predictions of mass permanent unemployment, and every time, new industries showed up to absorb the displaced workers. There is also the simple fact that a lot of jobs are going to be very hard to automate for the foreseeable future. Plumbers, electricians, nurses, hairdressers, daycare workers, and tradespeople in general are all dealing with messy physical environments that AI and robotics are nowhere near ready to handle reliably. If you work with your hands in unpredictable settings, you are probably one of the safer demographics in the entire economy right now, which is a sentence that would have sounded insane to anyone reading career advice in 2010. But here comes the bad news. Past waves of automation displaced specific types of work. AI is different because it targets cognitive labor across almost every industry simultaneously. A junior lawyer, a graphic designer, an accountant, a software developer, a copywriter, and a customer service agent are not going to be displaced by the same machine in the same way at the same time, but they are all being squeezed by the same general technology. And that has not really happened before. When the displacement is broad enough, the usual story of workers transitioning into new industries starts to break down because there are not enough new industries showing up fast enough to absorb everyone. And even if new jobs do eventually appear, the transition period can be brutal. Outsourcing did not destroy the American economy in aggregate, but it absolutely gutted entire towns across the Midwest, and a lot of those communities have never really recovered. The aggregate numbers can look fine while specific groups of people get crushed. The other piece of bad news is what happens to the value of your time itself. Wages are basically a function of supply and demand. If AI dramatically increases the supply of cognitive work that can be done cheaply, then the price of that work has to come down. Even if you keep your job, you might find that your raises stop coming, your benefits get trimmed, and the leverage you used to have when negotiating with your employer just quietly disappears. You will not get fired, you will just slowly get worth less. The other side of the coin. Now here is where it gets interesting, because while the value of your labor is going down, the value of something else is going way up. Over the last 40 years or so, an enormous gap has opened up between people who earn money by working and people who earn money by owning. Wages have grown slowly. Asset prices, meaning stocks, real estate, businesses, and increasingly things like intellectual property, have grown enormously. Someone who held a diversified investment portfolio through the last 15 years has done extraordinarily well, while someone who just collected a paycheck and tried to save responsibly has watched the cost of housing, education, and healthcare all outrun their income. AI accelerates this trend rather than reversing it. If a company can replace $100,000 of salaries with $10,000 of software, that $90,000 gap does not disappear. It becomes profit. That profit goes to shareholders. Shareholders are people who own assets, so every job that gets automated is essentially a transfer of value from people who work to people who own. This is why you are seeing the very wealthy get noticeably wealthier, even during periods when wages have been stagnant or declining in real terms. There are now more billionaires, more people with 8-figure net worths, and more people buying genuinely absurd luxury goods than at any point in human history. Lamborghini sells more cars now than they used to. Private jet travel is at record highs. Watches that cost more than houses have waiting lists years long. The money is not gone. It is just collecting in a much smaller number of hands. What this means for your money. So if you are an ordinary person trying to figure out how to navigate this, here is the practical version of what is happening. First, the income side of your financial life is getting riskier. The job you have today might not exist in 5 years, and even if it does, it might pay less in real terms than it does now. This means the old advice of just working hard, getting good at your job, and slowly climbing the ladder is becoming a less reliable strategy than it used to be. Skills become obsolete faster, industries shift faster, and loyalty to a single employer pays off even less than it already did. Second, the ownership side of your financial life is becoming more important than ever. If most of the gains from AI flow to the owners of capital, then the only realistic way for an ordinary person to participate in those gains is to become, even on a very small scale, an owner of capital yourself. That does not mean you need to be a venture capitalist. It means that the simple act of putting money into a low-cost index fund every month is no longer just retirement planning. It is increasingly the main way that regular people stay attached to the economy at all. Third, your spending habits matter more than they used to. In an environment where income is uncertain and the cost of essentials keeps creeping up, the gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only thing that actually gets converted into ownership. Lifestyle inflation, where every raise gets immediately absorbed by a nicer apartment or a newer car, used to be a way of slowly limiting your future options. Now it is a way of locking yourself out of the part of the economy that is actually growing. The bigger picture. The really uncomfortable part of all of this is that no one is really steering the ship. The companies building AI are doing it because there is enormous money in being first. The companies adopting AI are doing it because their competitors are doing it, and falling behind is not an option. The investors funding all of this are doing it because the returns are too good to ignore. There is no master plan to displace workers. There is just a lot of individual decisions that all add up to the same outcome. Universal basic income gets brought up a lot as a possible fix. and there have been some interesting experiments. A study funded by an organization linked to Sam Altman gave 1,000 people $1,000 a month for 3 years and found that recipients did work slightly less, spent more time on leisure and family, and reported better mental health, although a lot of those benefits faded as the cost of living kept rising. The results were not catastrophic, but they were not utopian either, and they showed that even meaningful cash transfers do not really solve the underlying problem of being a person whose economic role has been removed. The honest truth is that AI is not going to instantly create a world where nobody works and everybody is taken care of. What it is much more likely to do is accelerate trends that have already been underway for decades. The value of labor goes down, the value of ownership goes up, the gap between the two widens, and the people who understand the shift early have a lot more options than the people who do not. You probably cannot stop any of this from happening, but you can pay attention to which side of the equation your own money is on, because that is increasingly the question that determines everything else. Now, if you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss an upload, and ring the notification bell while you're at it.